Hi everyone, I'm Rosemary, and today I would like to guide you in painting this narwhal bank. Okay, so now all of you should have picked up your kits at the library, and in your kits you will find everything you need to complete the project, except maybe a sponge, and that you can use a kitchen sponge or any kind of sponge that you have in the house. Probably one with more holes in it is a good idea, not a very solid sponge, to give you that open mesh kind of a look. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the base coat, and I'm just going to give you a couple of tips before we start. Now, I gave you colors that I did the piece in. Now, if you have other colors and you have other paints that you want to use, feel free, but let me just tell you the process of applying the paints. Whenever, anything is white on ceramics, it's not the same white as it was made from. This is called bisque, white bisque. It starts out in clay, it's fired in the kiln, and it becomes white bisque. Now, white bisque is porous, which means if you left it without painting it, it would eventually turn yellow and dirty easily. So wherever there's white, I paint white. Okay, so I gave you white acrylic and paint that you can put on there. And also any designs that you do, that's done last, especially dots. These are done with the back end of the brush, because dots will stay wet for a very long time and you can smear them with your hand. So I do that the last thing I do. And anytime you do any kind of design, whether it's the sponging that I did or you want to do flowers on his body, you still need a base coat underneath. You don't want to do your design first because you'd never be able to go in and put a base coat around it. You need to seal the bisque with acrylic. So we start out with the big areas first. Like I put gray on him first and white, and then we did the design work on top. Now, make sure you remove the plug, which I have already done to this one, and I'm going to paint along with you so that you can see rather than just listen to what I'm doing. And remember, you are the artist, so you don't have to do it exactly like I did it. You can do it any way that you would like. But make sure that you get a base coat on there first. Now, you have quite a few colors in there. You also have this light teal, might make a nice base color on there. You can use the salmon, you can use the pink, you can do whatever you want. You can make them multicolored, but just make sure that you seal all of the white areas with an acrylic paint first before you do any design work. So I'm going to paint along with you. I'm going to paint, I didn't get my white, well, okay, I'm going to have to leave this because I didn't pull out white just now, but I'm going to put gray on here first, on the back. And when you paint your colors on, you paint them nice and smooth. Don't dip for more paint until you have that color nice and smooth without ridges in your paint. Now you can go over the eye, okay, because the colors on the eye are done over the gray. If you get a little bit where I put the gold, no worries. So just get a nice base coat on him. Nice and smooth. Now I work fast because the paint does dry very fast, and especially if you pull it out all the way and I keep going over it until it's smooth, it will dry almost immediately. Look, I just did that, and that is dry to the touch. But if you put it on like this and you leave it thick like that, that will never dry. So see how far it goes, just a little bit that I put on the brush. And it dries almost immediately. So you put it on thinly like that so that it will dry fast, and also that you have a smooth coverage. If you leave it on lumpy, it will dry lumpy, and then there's nothing that you can do to get rid of those lumps except maybe sandpaper, and then you have to start from scratch. So nice and smooth. You should always do the bottom of your piece. Always paint the bottom of your piece. A piece is never completely finished unless the bottom is painted. So now with this YouTube video, you don't have to work as fast as I do. You can stop the video, you can pause it, and you can go back. That's the one advantage of having the video. So you don't have to watch me painting this gray, but if you want to, that's fine. Nice long strokes, and then crisscross in different directions to smooth it out. So I go down, and then I cross it to smooth out the lines. You see I'm holding him by the horn because the horn is going to be a different color later. And like I said, you don't have to do it exactly the way I did it. The horn could be the teal. It could be any of the other colors that I gave you. I believe I also gave you purple, which I don't have on mine, but you can put the purple on it also. So I'm going to do this one up a little differently, that you'll get an idea of the different ways that you can do it. But the first thing I want to do is I still want to base coat him in the gray because it's a nice neutral color to put any other designs that you want on top of it. And that's why I gave you the gray. I believe I gave you the gray in a little larger bottle. Nice and smooth, that is. Okay, a little bit more, need a little bit more gray. That's why I gave you the gray in the bottle and not in those little pods, because I'm seeing now that I do need a little bit more than those pods would hold. So you have the extra of the gray. I would suggest putting that on the body and then using the colors to do designs over the top. Now you have a small brush, you have two brushes, and I'm working with a little bigger one so I can go a little faster, but you can base coat with the square shader. This is a square shader. And then with the pointy one, if you're having trouble edging, you can use the pointy one to edge around these areas that you don't want to get it onto. Just make sure you pull it out, same way. Nice and smooth. I'm going to go back to my big brush now and finish up the areas that I didn't get. And then you go back and you look at it. You turn it upside down and you look at it, because whenever you think you've got everything covered, if you turn it upside down, you always see spots that you missed. So all the white spots should be covered, including the bottom, which I didn't do the bottom right now, but you should. Okay, so there's the gray on him. Now always wash your brush by swishing it in the water back and forth. Don't bang it because then the hairs open up. Swish it. Dry it on your paper towel. You should have a paper towel. I think I put that in the kits. You should have a paper towel. And I always cover my table with a towel and with some kind of paper towels underneath it so you don't ruin whatever you're working on. All right, so now I'm going to do the chest area on this one. I have white. On this one I'm going to do, maybe I'll do the light teal. It'll be a little different so you can see how it looks. I never like to do the same colors twice on something. So we'll do the light teal on this part. Oh, it's such a pretty color. You have two different color teals. You have the dark teal and you have the light teal. Now I'm using the big brush until I get very close to the edges, and then I'll go to my smaller brush to edge it better. Okay, so I did that. Now I'm going to go back to the small brush to do my edging. Now where I went out of the lines with the gray onto this area, it's probably going to take a couple of coats. I can see here that my teal color is not covering the gray. When you first put paint on the bisque is porous, so it absorbs the paint and it covers much better. When you're going over another color, you usually need a couple of coats. So you try to be neat, but it's just as easy to go back and do a second coat. Okay, so I did a teal color. Now, if you want this to look like a real narwhal, well, you can go for it. But I always like with ceramics to have a little creativity, and I mean, a narwhal doesn't really look like that with a big smile on his face anyway, so it's cartoony, so you can decorate it however you want. He doesn't have flowers on his belly, you know, so you can change it up is what I'm saying, and you can be creative. It's your piece, so you are the artist. You be as creative as you want on this piece. Okay, so now I got my two base coats on. I think I'm going to do my sponging next. So with my sponge, and see, I have a very holy sponge. It's got a lot of holes in it. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of the teal. Now I don't dip it directly onto the piece. I blot it out on the paper towel to get more of an open kind of a look to it. I don't want it to be solid like this. I want to do it till it gets a little bit meshy looking. And then twist your hand around, and don't press hard. If you press hard, you're going to get big blobs. And twist and turn. And put this all over. And the one good thing is now that I have the teal on his belly, it doesn't matter if I get it on his belly now. And you don't have to do the same color all over. I'm doing it in an all over kind of a pattern. But you can do just certain colors on the tail, like you could do the pink or the salmon color just on the tail, and do the teals on his body. I think I'll try that for now. So since I did the teal, I'm going to do the darker teal next because that's already in my sponge and I don't have to wash my sponge out. So instead of washing your sponge out, just use that same spot, pick up a little bit of the darker teal, and remember, like I said, when you first press it down, you get blobs. So you want to work it around a little bit until you get it more of an open look, a meshier look. And don't press hard. You just see how overpowering, excuse me, let me just shut my phone off. Okay, sorry, usually I shut it off. And do that all over. And very light touch, especially on the darker colors. And twist your hand, otherwise you're going to get the same kind of a pattern going around, and you want it to be a little bit different. Okay, you get the idea, so you can play with it. And if you don't like the way a spot came out, you go back with the gray once it's dry. Always remember, when you have to layer colors one over the other, you have to make sure that it's dry before you can put another color on top of it. Otherwise, they will blend together and you'll get a third color in between there somewhere. All right, so now I'm going to go to the salmon, and I'm going to use the other side of my sponge, but you can wash your sponge out. Just remember, when you wash your sponge out, to make sure you get all of that moisture out of it, because you don't want the sponge dripping. It will drip down on the piece. So wash it, wring it out really tight, and blot it on the towel to get a lot of the moisture out of it, because you just want a damp sponge. So now I'm picking up some of the salmon, and again I'm going to do the same thing, take some of it out. And I'm going to do more salmon on the tail so that I can make him look a little different this time. Maybe I'll do the tail and the tips of his, what would you call them? Flippers. Okay, so I'll make it look a little different than this one I have up here. So that means I'm going to need a little bit more of the color. So I'm edging the tail and edging the flippers with the salmon color. Okay, could use a little bit more. These colors you should have plenty of, because I only dipped once to do the whole piece. Just a little bit more on the flappers and the tail, because I wanted that to stand out, to be a little different. Now you see what I did there? I just had the tail look a little different. Now on this one, I kept it all the same, but on this one, I did the peach, but you can use any of the colors. And then I'm going to lightly sponge some of it on his body too, because I like all the colors on his body. And you also have a pink, I believe. I gave you a purple, so you can play with the colors and do it to your liking. Okay, so I put some peach on him. He's got a little blob in the middle of his mouth here, huh? I put a little of the peachy color on his lips. But I also, if you see this one, I put a line in his mouth with that salmon color. Okay, now I did this one in gold. This one I'm going to do, and I think we're going to keep the salmon theme going. No, maybe we'll do the teal. We'll do the dark teal on here. Oops. I just want you to see that you can change it up and make it look however you want. There's no right or wrong when it comes to art. And I'm using the little brush, so that little brush edges really well. But just remember to wash it as soon as you're finished with it. Even if it's in between colors, I always swish it in the water, because as fast as the colors dry on the piece, they dry in the hairs of the brush. And again, I don't bang it on the bottom of the bowl. I wiggle it, roll it to a point, and that brush I've been using for all of these classes that I've been doing. Up on YouTube, I guess at this point you've seen that I have over 20 videos going, and you can look at them and get ideas from them also. All right, so here we go, and I did a teal on there. You could do the teal, you could tip it in a little bit of the gold if you'd like. So now, let's see, I'm gonna do his eyes, and his eyes I did with the two colors. I did the lighter teal and the darker teal. So you make a circle, or you can fill in the whole center of the eye if you'd like, with the lighter teal. And that's probably gonna take 2 coats also, because I'm going over the gray. It is taking a while to cover. But you let it dry, and then you go back and you do a second coat. So I get the first coat on there now. And I'll let it dry and I'll go back and do the second coat. Now on the mouth, I want to do a little line of the salmon color. So really roll that brush to a nice point, your pointy brush. Roll it to a nice point and get a line going in his mouth. Nice and gentle. Okay, so I got a little line going in his mouth. I think you could see it on this one better. I might have gone over it a couple of times. A little hard to see. But there you go, and I have that on there. So let me see if I can go back. The eyes are still a little bit wet. Now, with the colors on here, I did them with the back end of the brush, with the handle of the brush. And the 2 brushes that you have 2 different size handles. So you'll be able to do the dots in 2 different sizes. Now, if you're creative enough and you can hand paint, feel free. If you don't want to paint anything on there, you don't have to. If you want to sponge on there, you can sponge on there. If you want to do stripes, you want to do your own kind of flowers, that's up to you. But what I did, I'm going to show you what I did, is with the back end of the brush, I'll show you how to do this 5-petaled flower. So I'm using the smaller of the handles. You do 2 dots close to each other. See that? 2 dots, okay. And then you do 1 underneath it, and it's almost like a triangle across and down, okay? That gives you the proper spacing to do a dot on either side, and it makes a perfect circle. So you do a dot here, and you do a dot here. Now look how that comes together, okay? I mean, I'm doing it upside down, so it's a little cockeyed, but if you do the triangle first, and then you do the dots on either side, it comes out pretty good. Okay, so you don't have to do them all in the salmon. I will. So it's 1, 2, and then 1 underneath it, and then 1 on either side. Okay? That's a little bit better, but there's no right or wrong when it comes to a flower. I'm going to do 1 more. Now the dots stay wet for a very long time, so just watch you don't lean your hands in them. I would suggest finishing the eyes, which I just put my hands in. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a second coat on his eye now that it's dry. And that gives you better coverage. You can see the eye a lot better now. And then I'll go back to my dots, because when that's dry, I will put the darker teal in the center. And I never do it directly in the center because I always think they look scared to death, so I do it up touching the top of the light teal. So my dark teal has like almost a U of the light teal around it. But while that's drying again, I'm going to go back and finish up the flowers. Now, when it comes to the leaves, like I did kind of like leaves on there, you can also do that with the back end of your brush. Let me just get a little color there. So you dip into the teal and you lay the brush down and then you pull it to a point. You pull it, you don't just do a dot, okay? You pull it. All right, let me see if I can do it upside down so you can see it. right, you put it down, and then you pull. Put it down, and then pull. Okay, you see that? So you put it down, and then you pull your brush, and it almost comes to a point on the end. Little tricks, because it's so hard. But if you can paint, and you're good at hand painting, go for it. So I put at least 3 leaves on each flower. You can do more, but there's 3 leaves on each flower. And then I did some trailing little dots, and you could do those in another color. It doesn't have to all be the same color. I think and I'm going to put one of those teal dots in the center of the flower. You need a center on the flowers also. Mine are a little cockeyed because I'm working upside down. Do that, and then, okay, when you trail, I'm going to use the bigger handle. When you trail dots, if you don't dip a second time into the color, each dot will get smaller as you go along. So I start here, and then I trail, and I just do it until my handle of my brush runs out of paint, and each dot gets a little bit smaller. Okay, so I will do that down here. I don't know if you could see. Don't do them straight and curve them. Okay, see what I just did there? That was with 1 dip on the handle of the brush. If you dip a second time, the dots are going to get all different sizes. But they're all different sizes now, but they're uniform. So just dip once and do the dots until the handle runs out of paint. And you see how I curve it? I curve them in different directions when I get to the edge. And I did one on the bottom flower. Okay, so now, like I said, you have to let that dry before you can go back and do the eyes. That's why I suggest doing the eyes first. This way you won't be putting your hands in the dots. I'm going to try to do it very carefully now, just so I can show you. Okay, so I just did a circle on the top part of the light teal. I did the dark teal. Now, if you have black, you can do black, but black is harsh, and I think on this I kind of like these colors. If you went to Michael's or any of hobby stores, you can pick up acrylic paints, and you could do whatever you would like. Okay? And then the only other thing that I did is I put a little highlight in the top of the eye. Now, if you look at anyone's eyes, anyone that's near you in the house, every eye has a reflection of light, and that's what the little salmon dot that I did on his eye is, a reflection of light. It's supposed to stand for a reflection of light. And again, you can do that with the back end of the brush. I'm going to go to the smaller, and you really should wait for it to dry. But I was able to get the dots on there. See what I did just now? I put that little salmon dot on his eye. Okay, and he's a very simple piece. He's done very fast. I've been working in ceramics for a lot of years, so I am fast. You do not have to be like that. Like I said, you can pause the video and you can work on your own, or you can go back and forth and watch what I was doing. But it's your piece. Be as creative as you like. I hope you enjoy ceramics. It's been a passion of mine for my whole life, and I enjoy very, very much what I do. So enjoy it. If you would like to do any future projects, to let your library know. And thank you all, and thank you all for enjoying my ceramics class. Hope to see you again.